Hey guys, Clint here, Horn and Fiber. I just finished turning a base plug for a new powder horn. I thought we'd install it together. Let's get started. A lot of work has gone into this horn already. Notably, the base was rounded and squared. This allowed us to get a nice snug fit between the horn and the base plug during the base plug turning process. If you have questions about turning or finishing base plugs, or if there's a particular style of base plug that you'd like to see me make, please leave a comment below. Also, if you'd like more information on rounding the base of a horn using heat or squaring the base of the horn, please check out some of our other YouTube videos where we cover these topics in more detail. Yeah, another element that we want to pay attention to when doing a lathe turn base plug is the wall thickness at the base of the horn. Most horn is thicker on one side than the other, and we want to get this uniform all the way around if we can. The reason for that is if the horn is thicker on one side than the other when you install the base plug, it will make the base plug appear to be sitting off center because it is relative to the outside of the horn. There's a couple of different ways we can do this. If you have a lathe that has variable speed and an outboard function where you can mount this, where it will turn and not hit anything, and you can really slow it down, you can turn the base of the horn to a uniform thickness. I don't have that, so I just use rasp and files to work the outside of the horn down to match the thinnest part of the horn. It's a little time consuming, but it is definitely worth the effort to do because once you get your base plug installed, it's going to sit nice and centered on the horn, and the results just really look good and clean. Before we actually install the base plug, there's still a couple of things I want to do to it, like make a staple for rear strap attachment and waterproof the inside of the cavity. One of the things we need to decide is grain orientation. Do we want the grain running up and down in the horn, or do we want it running across the horn? So I've looked at a slew of original horns trying to determine if there was a conventional direction that they oriented the grain in the base plug. And to the best of my ability, if it exists, I can't see it. Grain patterns seem to be running in every direction. I honestly believe they installed the base plug in such a way that it was most pleasing to their eye or that it was easiest to fit it into the horn. With that said, I'm going to choose to orient the grain in this base plug straight up and down. And I'm doing that primarily for three reasons. One, it will allow my staple to span across growth rings rather than being placed in a single growth ring if the grain was turned horizontal. Two, I orient it that way up and down when I turn a finial on a base plug because I believe that the edge grain is stronger than the horizontal grain. And then lastly, it will put a nice grain pattern on the outboard side of the horn, and I think that will be visually pleasing to the eye. That's my reasoning for orienting the grain straight up and down. Hope that makes sense. So I'm going to make both my staple and my pins for this horn out of 1/16 uncoated, just mild steel welding rod. For this horn, I want to create a rounded staple. So I choose an item that has about the same diameter as what I want on the inside of the staple and simply bend the wire around it. Using a pair of side cutters, I trim the ends inside the horn down to about 1/2 inch, and then fold them over to secure the staple in the base. The original base plugs that I've examined are not usually finished on the inside in any way, but this is something I started doing early on and continue to do on all my base plugs. I coat the inside of the plug with a heavy layer of wood glue. This helps create a moisture-resistant barrier that should help keep powder dry. I just use my finger to smear it around. Once the inside is coated, I set it up to dry so that any excess glue can drain back down around the staple. While that's drying, we'll go ahead and make our pins and lay out the placement of our pins on the base of our horn. Again, I'm making these pins out of 1/16 welding rod. I start by grinding one end flat and then cutting the pins to just over a 1/2 inch in length. These will be driven in flush with the horn body, and the flat head eliminates the need to file after installation. So the taper or tenon on our base plug is going to fit approximately 3/8 of an inch up inside the horn. We want to make sure that we place our pins in the middle to the rear part of that tenon without being too close to the edge. So somewhere right in here. The next thing you have to decide is how many pins you want holding your base plug in. Unless you're making an exact copy of a very specific style of horn, it's really a matter of personal preference. As a general rule, early horns like French and Indian War and Northern horns tend to have fewer pins, 4, 5, maybe as many as 7. Whereas later horns, 1770s on, and Southern horns especially tended to have a lot more pins, 6, 8, maybe even as many as 20. Usually decide is I take and working in either centimeters or inches, I measure the base of the horn at where I want to put the pins, and I see if I get a number that divides even easily. In this case, working in centimeters, I get 18 centimeters around the base of the horn. If I divide that by 2, that's 9. So if I go every 2 centimeters, I can put 9 pins holding this base plug in. I think that'll work for me. Using a 1/16 inch drill bit, I go ahead and pre-drill the holes in the horn body. The mandrel inserted into the horn just helps support the horn and prevent tear out while drilling. At this point, I carefully decide on the final alignment of the base plug in the horn body. Once determined, I make an indexing mark on the tenon of the base plug that aligns with the top hole in the horn body. This will be used to help me align the base plug during the final installation. All right, I think we finally have everything ready. Let's install the base plug. Again, I use wood glue to help ensure a waterproof seal. Traditionally, beeswax, pitch, or even lard could have been used in this application. I simply spread a bead around the inside of the horn and then use my finger to draw it up to the edge. I then insert the base plug, making sure that my index mark is aligned with the top hole. Then, using the holes that I'd pre-drilled in the horn, I go ahead and drill through into the base plug. I then insert a pin and drive it in flush. Of course, since I'm filming this and only have one shot at it, this first pin decides to give me a fit. So after a while, I give up on it, grab another pin, insert it into the hole, and drive it home using the hammer. With the first pin in place, I flip the horn over and repeat the process on the bottom, first drilling the hole and then driving the pin in flush. With the first two pins in place and the plug secure, I can now drill multiple holes at once and finish driving the remainder of the 9 pins in. I use a water-soaked rag to clean up any excess glue that might have squeezed out onto the horn body or the base plug. An old toothbrush can be really handy for getting down into tight little spaces. Lastly, I stand the horn up in such a way that any excess glue inside the horn will drain down around the base plug. I usually let the horn sit like this for about 24 hours. We've let our horn sit overnight. Everything should be good and dry. Let's have a look. So there's our lathe turn base plug installed. One of the things I like to do at this point is a quick leak check by blowing air into the horn. No air leaks means that this horn should be waterproof and should keep powder dry. Of course, if you're installing a lathe turn base plug, I hope you found something in this video that was useful to you. Please, if you have questions or comments, leave them down below. As always, I'd encourage you to like and subscribe. We sure would appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep the fire burning.